If those Mephisto fan theories weren't rabid before, oh boy. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Before I get into all things Loki, I do want to give a shout out to a blog that featured this channel. Hollywood Already Did it on its blog called 70 Movie Review YouTube Channels for Movie Lovers. You can check them out. The link below. The link will also be in the description. You'll see some shout outs to it on Twitter and Facebook as well. Finally, the withdrawal from all the weeks of no Marvel content is over. We get to shoot a little bit in our vein, and we get the first episode of Loki called Glorious Purpose. And it's a doozy. Here's what's interesting about this episode. I think anytime you start dealing with sci-fi episodes, the first episode of most sci-fi shows are typically rough. They are establishing a lot of the ground rules for what they're doing. It gets a little dry, and sometimes they may not even quite have their footing. Marvel really doesn't do anything without knowing what the next plan is. So the footing part or what they plan or what the show is going to be sort of is known. So a lot of it is now we're like, okay, do we get the theme and do we get the rhythm and do we get the sort of tone of the show done? And I think they nail it. This first episode is really well done. This first episode of Loki is bookended by a intro that sort of establishes where Loki was, how we got here. We see the in sequence from Endgame with Loki, where he grabs the Tesseract and kind of goes apart. We see it all play out again, and then we see exactly where he ends up. That all leads up, and we sort of during that get through an establishing of the time variance authority. TVA is set. We learn what they do. We get sort of the ramifications of the levels and store and what they sort of do. And we also get a pretty cool Miss Minutes video montage played by and voiced by the amazing Tara Strong, that establishes in a very simplistic way, and as simple as you possibly can to make it digestible for the viewers who don't normally have this type of stuff, timelines, multiverses, and all of that good stuff. It all plays a part, and we all sort of get a messaging and an easier way to digest that for the audience. Kudos to that. And the back end of this episode kind of leads us to where we're going from this point on. But the sweet spot is that middle, which essentially, anybody who's a theater fan or acting fan, is basically a one-on-one pong session between Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston. Loki and Mobius have a great tit for tat, mano a mano. I'm going to break you down as much as I possibly can, and I'm going to play that I'm bigger than you, just mano a mano type of situation. That is just fun to watch. It's two actors chewing up scenery, but you also get the pure chemistry the two have together, where it's partly comedy, but also pretty tragic too. We always think about in these series and in this series with Thor getting the raw end of the deal and being so tragic and sad things happening to him, but and that's a lot of it because Loki has done so many terrible things in the world that you're like, he's the villain. Who cares if he hurts? But if you break it down, he's going through the exact same things as Loki. What's fascinating here is that we're getting the Loki pre the Dark World. So he has not lost his mother. He has not lost his father. And so we get a sequence in this where the TVA Mobius is showing him clips that we, as an audience, already know that if he stayed in the timeline that he was fixed in, these things were going to happen. And there's nothing really. It sort of gets into this whole fate thing. There's nothing he can really do about it. This Loki now is pulled out of that and is in a world where he gets to look at that. He gets to see those clips, see what he was becoming, and maybe, possibly become a different person or a different version of that, or maybe stay on that same path and do it in a different timeline. We get to see how he reacts in real time to seeing his mother die. We get to see that he was pretty much at the hands where the blood is on his hands because he was trying to play a joke or prank or be mischievous to his brother, and it wound up backfiring and going to his mother. We see him visually see his own death at the hands of Thanos, and you don't know how much that can just affect a person. But Tom Hiddleston nails it. Loki kills it. The emotional beats in this. It's weird because this episode does bridge between being jovial and comedy and kind of not slapsticky, but very Coen brother-esque sort of in that sci-fi realm. But then it takes the moments to get depth, and it feels good. And the heart of this is just establishing those two characters and their tit for tat that's going to happen over the course of this series. Anybody who's a Quantum Leap fan, it feels a lot like we're getting the Scott Bakula Stockwell type of duo forming here, but this feels just a much much more Marvel way of getting to that point. Um, Overall, I think the episode's great. There are a couple of things that I won't say bother me, but it's a bit disconcerting. It's how flippant they are with how the stuff that existed and what was so big in phase 1 through 3 just don't matter, and how trivialized they are. The Infinity Stones are like paperweights. The Tesseract doesn't work there. It doesn't really hold any value. So you're kind of just like, doesn't mean any much. It sort of weakens everything that came before this. Now, this isn't something that's specific to Loki. Comics do that overall. They'll have this big thing that is earth binding, the worst thing humanly possible. They're building, and it happens. You're like, oh my God, that was amazing. And then in the very next episode, like, this bigger thing is coming. That really ain't that big. It works in comics because you're watching them issues, and some issues stop and start. It's a bit weird to get jarring to have that happen in this. Luckily, we are in sort of a different timeline. So for the timeline that is timeline A, that is still the biggest thing for them. So in this pocket of the world where timeline B is sort of taking place, I can abide by and take by that saying, okay, this in this world, what happened in timeline A is not as important for the folks here in timeline B. It's going to take some time to get used to, but I think the tone changes on the fly could become sort of neck jerking for some. It works for me. I like oddball stuff and weird things and sort of throwing it all together. So you give me some Coen Brothers mixed with some sci-fi, mixed with some Quantum Leap, and I'm in. For some, that weirdness, that super weirdness, is going to be off-putting. What I do love is that there seems to be, it's a weird thing with rhythm and a pattern. There seems to be a rhythm that is going through the entire episode. You can kind of like, oh yeah, this is going, this is going, this is going. It never really slows down until you get to the end. And I don't know how the rest of this series goes in comparison to this episode, because this episode's so focused on just a 1-to-1. I think the rest of the episodes could be completely different than this, and I'm okay with that. I don't know if this ends up being a Quantum Leap where he's going from time to time and fixing things. I don't know if this is a Star Trek or we're going to go to undiscovered worlds. That I don't know. What I do know is at the end of this episode, we get a reveal that says the person that is breaking the timeline and doing this is Loki. Does not necessarily mean it's the Loki that we know. It could be a different version. It could be another one that's splintered off. It could be what we've seen some footage and what people have been saying is that the lady Loki, that could be a part of it. We could get the young Loki, the kid Loki. We don't know. Loki sort of splinters off and does a bunch of different things. So we don't have that, and I'm cool with just getting the shadow of the back of the head. But we do know that in the brief moment that we see Mobius in field as a TVA, there was something that happened in, I believe, I want to say the 50s. I know it was late the 1500s, that a brutal murder happened that somebody was playing around at the time. I believe it's still attached to Loki, but them just sort of giving that look to the Red Demon, of course, harkens back all everybody's emotions for how they felt through everything through WandaVision. Everything's Mephisto. The Kablooey Gum, Mephisto. Loki, who was doing all the crazy stuff, Mephisto. Every single thing is Mephisto. I don't want to get back into that world again. I want to just take this, consume this, and enjoy it in real time as opposed to conjecturing about everything that is Mephisto. But I do think within the world, it does feel like we are headed to that world with them using multiverses and just saying it straight out, and us knowing that this somehow connects to whatever's going on in Strange. I think we're clearly getting to a point where the multiverse and the madness and all that stuff's going, that I do think that there is a plan to put someone bigger than Loki and someone as big as a character like Mephisto on the board. I just don't know when or how that happens, but I'm willing to take this ride and get there. A couple of the characters that pop in a little bit is Gugu Mbatha-Raw as Ravonna. the head judge of the TVA, or at least the head judge that is in charge of the case for Loki. I think that she's too big of an actress to not play a bigger part, so I think she's definitely going to come back around. And then there is the lead hunter for the TVA, and Hunter B-15, who she's having fun. And I love how she just does not. She's sort of more by the books, whereas Mobius' Owen Wilson's a little unorthodox in his approach. I feel like what we're going to learn is that Mobius has tried to be by the books before. It has not worked. So he's now thinking sort of outside of the box to come up with what it is to chase down Loki. And the only way he can think of is, hey, to chase Loki, we need Loki. And he's going out of his way to be a little bit more lenient than I think he normally would be. And I'm excited. I'm sure down the line we're going to find out why he's in this. I can be a little bit more open with this because I need this to stop. I need to get whatever this is going to do. And the fact that we already know that this is one of the few Marvel episodes or Marvel shows that are going to get 2 seasons, we're in for a treat. This is fun. This is my bag. I love WandaVision. I really enjoy Falcon, but this sci-fi weird, just time leaping, that's me. I get all of it. What did you guys think about the first episode of Loki, Glorious Purpose? Go ahead and leave your comments in the comments below. If you haven't, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI, or you can hit us up an email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name. That's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any other place podcasts. We are doing another run of our Marvel Presents with Jamie Jerick, where we're talking about Loki and looking at a lot of the time traveling shows and movies throughout history through the eyes of Loki. So that'll be fun. That'll be here on the YouTube channel and on any of those podcasting streaming services. But like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.